I teach at the International Foundation Program in New College at the University of Toronto, and I've done so for about the last 7 years. It's an EAP program. It has four main courses. There's an academic listening and speaking, a critical reading and writing course, a USS, which is University Skills and Strategies, and then a first-year history course. And my students take all of these courses concurrently. I teach and I lead the critical reading and writing course, which is a full year, 24-week program. And my students are conditionally accepted undergrads to the Faculty of Arts and Science, and they need to pass all of these courses with a minimum of 60 in each in order to continue on into their undergrad programs. I followed a similar path to quite a few ESL teachers. I graduated from my undergrad in philosophy, and in 1998, I decided to travel to South Korea. I followed some other friends that had been doing the same thing, and they found, it was a good opportunity to travel, see the world, also make some money and get some teaching under their belts. And I'd always wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't really know if that was going to be in the cards for me. So when I had this opportunity to go abroad and teach English with no training and no qualifications, I actually jumped at it. And I went to Seoul and I spent the first year and a half teaching at a private language school. I taught both kids and I taught adults and, in between there, the teenagers. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, and I have to say that I would probably want to apologize to probably my first couple of classes. In any case, I did a little bit of university teaching while I was there too. And I took a small break. I went to Australia and then I came back to Korea and I did another 3 years at a private language school. Most of it was conversation, but I did dabble in reading and writing as well. But not so much in the academic, mostly into pretty much the conversation type of ESL classes. And then in 2003, I came back to Canada and I started my teaching career here, also at a private language school in Toronto. And those classes at the time were mostly conversation, I would say, although grammar was a lot heavier than it had been when I was in Seoul. And I did that for about 5 years before finally moving on and settling into where I am now. Identity is a really hard thing to define. I think it's something that not only do new teachers struggle with, but more experienced teachers struggle with as well. When push comes to shove and you're asked, what is your professional identity, or how do you define yourself professionally, it's not an easy question to articulate an answer to. It is something that's fluid. It's something that changes over time. It's something that is affected by the people who you're around, the students that you've been teaching. It's affected by the professional development that you undertake during your career. It's something that is evolving and it never stays the same. I find that for myself. Every time I write a bio, it's something that's a little challenging for me to know what I want to focus on. But what I would say is it is something that is shaped by what you do and the actions that you take, not only in the classroom but outside the classroom. It's something where you want to surround yourself with other people outside of your little bubble. It's really easy to get stuck inside your classroom and define who you are simply by what's going on in that classroom. But there's a big world out there of ELT, and I really suggest that it's something where you can develop by looking at what other people do, seeing how other people talk about the issues, learning what's come before you and what's maybe coming ahead. One great way to do that is to start developing a personal learning network, or a PLN. It's something you might hear of from time to time. And for me, it's something that I started doing in Twitter, probably about 7 or 8 years ago now. And, at first I did the very common thing. I started following a couple of celebrities and just thought it was really neat as to how I was going to be able to kind of talk very directly with them. But those celebrities kind of started to include people like Jeremy Harmer and Scott Thornbury. And as I started following more and more people on Twitter, I realized that I was following more and more teachers. And I was getting global perspectives. I was going to blog posts that they would share on Twitter, and I was commenting on those things. And it was really helping me identify how I felt about different issues in the classroom, how I dealt with behaviors, how I dealt with the skills and the systems that we practice in our classes, similarly or differently. And really, by seeing how someone else does something or doesn't do something, it forces you to think about how you do it and how you want to define yourself. And as I say, that's part of your professional identity that you're going to start out with. But as you do more and more things, and as you're exposed to more and more things, and more people around the world, you are going to shape that identity differently, and it's not going to be something that was the same as when you started with. Certainly right now, I would say my identity includes University of Toronto. It includes TESOL Toronto being a president in the past. It now includes IATEFL TD SIG, which is the Teacher Development SIG. And there's many other things that I could probably add to that, but if you ask me tomorrow, it might be something a little bit different. Tips for new teachers. One thing I would say is definitely try to engage with the online community. I think it's one of those things where you don't know what's out there until you take a look around. And you may think, you don't really know where to start, but ask one of your tutors. They'll probably have a great idea as to where to start. Another thing that is probably worthwhile mentioning is experiment. Don't worry about making mistakes in your classroom. We always suggest to students that they should feel comfortable making mistakes because our classrooms are the environment in which to do that in a safe way. And I think to a degree, we should feel the same way about our teaching, especially when we're new. The types of environments that new teachers typically teach in are usually not super high stakes, and I think that provides a really ideal environment for you to try out different approaches, different techniques that you hear about through your online PLN, and things that you wouldn't normally do. That way you can test the waters, you can sort of feel what types of things you feel comfortable teaching in your class, the different approaches that you like to do, and even the skills. You may find that listening and speaking is just not your thing, and something else is. So I would highly recommend both going online, trying to engage with the community outside of your classroom, but also using your classroom as a great environment to practice and try something new. So good luck.